Hey everyone, welcome to the Way Wednesdays virtual Midrash. Great to be with you as always. If I haven't told you yet, you need to get the app. See this guy right here? You can go to thewaycongregation.com and you can get the app. You can just scroll all the way down, or you can just take your phone and take a little picture. Why do you want the app? Well, it's got a reading schedule on it. It has a bunch of teachings. If you want to give, you can do it through that. It has a messaging feature so you can chat with one another, which is great because then you can pray for each other. And there's a lot that is on the app. So I really want to encourage you to get the Way Congregation app. It's going to, it's going to change your life. Yes, I hope so. I hope that it will bring us all closer together. That is the goal. I'm also putting resources on there. So some of my books I'm putting on there just for free. You guys can download them. So take advantage of it. Really, it's for you guys to use. And if you want to put your questions there that we can maybe get to when we come here and do the virtual Midrash. So lots of good reasons to get it. So I hope you do. And we tonight are looking at Re'eh, see, Deuteronomy 11:26 through 16. We'll be taking a look at that. And I have with me my good friend, Bob Rico. Bob, you're muted, just so you know. But we are going to be going through tonight's Torah portion, and I think it's going to be a wonderful time, as always. You know, God never ceases to amaze us with the things that he puts in his word. And that's why I love going through it. It's great to see you, Bob. How are you?
I'm fine. Super.
Fantastic. Well,
hitting the ground running.
Pardon?
Hitting the ground running.
All right. Well, I am glad to hear that. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we just get into the text and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that's our plan. So let me make sure to share. Okay, I'm sharing the screen. Everybody can see it. And here we go. All right. So, behold, I set before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today. And the curse if you do not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside from the way which I command you today, to go after other gods, which you have not known. Now it shall be when the Lord your God has brought you into the land which you go to possess, that you shall put the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. And are they not on the other side of the Jordan toward the setting sun in the land of the Canaanites who dwell in the plain opposite Gilgal beside the terebinth trees of Moreh? For you will cross over the Jordan and go in to possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and you will possess it and dwell in it. And you shall be careful to observe all the statutes and judgments which I set before you today. We'll keep going into 12. These are the statutes and judgments which you should be careful to observe in the land which the Lord your God of your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations which you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. And you shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, and burn their wooden images with fire. You shall cut down the carved images of their gods and destroy their names from that place. You shall not worship the Lord your God with such things, but you shall seek the place where the Lord your God chooses out of all your tribes to put his name for his dwelling place. And there you shall go. There you shall take your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, the heave offerings of your hand, your vowed offerings, your freewill offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. And you shall eat before the Lord your God. And you shall rejoice in all to which you have put your hand, you and your households in which the Lord your God has blessed you. You shall not do as we are doing here today, every man doing whatever is right in his own eyes. For as yet you have not come to the rest and the inheritance which the Lord your God is giving you. But when you cross over the Jordan and dwell in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to inherit, and he gives you rest from all your enemies round about, so that you dwell in safety, then there will be the place where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide. There you shall bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, the heave offerings of your hand, and all your choice offerings which you vow to the Lord. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and your daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levite who is within your gates, since he has no portion nor inheritance with you. Take heed to yourselves that you do not offer your burnt offerings in every place that you see, but in the place which the Lord chooses, in one of your tribes. There you shall offer your burnt offerings, and there you shall do all that I command you. However, you may slaughter and eat meat within your gates, whatever your heart desires, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean may eat of it, of the gazelle and the deer alike. Only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it out on the earth like water. You may not eat within your gates the tithe of your grain, or your new wine, or your oil, of the firstborn of your herd, or your flock, or of any of your offerings which you vow, of your freewill offerings, or of the heave offering of your hand. But you must eat them before the Lord your God in the place which the Lord your God chooses, you and your son and your daughter, and your male servant, your female servant, and the Levite who is within your gates, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God in all to which you put your hands. Take heed to yourselves that you do not forsake the Levite as long as you live in the land. When the Lord your God enlarges your border as he has promised you, and you say, let me eat meat, because you long to eat meat, you may eat as much meat as your heart desires. If the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, then you may slaughter from your herd and from your flock, which the Lord has given you, just as I have commanded you, and you may eat within your gates as much as your heart desires. Just as the gazelle and the deer are eaten, so you may eat them. The unclean and the clean alike may eat them. Only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is the life. You may not eat the life with the meat. You shall not eat it. You shall pour it out on the earth like water. You shall not eat it, that it may go well with you and your children after you, when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. Only the holy things which you have in your vowed offerings you shall take and go to the place which the Lord chooses. And you shall offer your burnt offerings, the meat and the blood, and on the altar of the Lord your God, and the blood of your sacrifices shall be poured out on the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall eat the meat. Observe and obey all these words which I command you, that it may go well with you and your children after you forever, when you do what is good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. When the Lord your God cuts off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you displace them and dwell in their land, take heed to yourselves that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates they have done to their gods, for they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it nor take away from it. Wow. Yeah, you're muted again there, buddy. So, incredible stuff. I mean, you know, what God has told us is he wants us to worship him differently than the gods of these other nations. Now, sadly, we know that Israel fell into worshiping those other gods. And you might say, oh, how could they possibly do that? How could you possibly get into burning your sons and your daughters? Well, you know, Solomon did that. Solomon, for all of his wisdom, was not a very smart dude. And of course, he wasn't a very obedient guy either, because the very things which God said not to do, he didn't do. God says, do not multiply gold. What did he do? He multiplied gold. It was an abundance, and silver was just like nothing. And then he says, don't multiply women. He had 900 wives and concubines. And then it says, don't multiply horses. Well, he had that as well. And then he was seeking all of these contracts and agreements with these other nations, and it ultimately led him to establish high places in the area of Gehenna, and that's where they were burning their sons and their daughters. Yes, Solomon did that. And you know, God is very much against that because it's atrocious, it's disgusting, and yet that's what these gods were doing. And Bob, you and I have been talking about this whole idea of authority. You know, the authority is so important, but when we give in to the ways of the enemy, we're giving up our authority. We are saying, I don't need this. and then we're giving the enemy authority over us. And ultimately, what that happened for Israel, what it led to, was them getting kicked out of the land.
Well, what the whole element of authority is fundamental. It is, and we don't recognize how we give up our authority. In this country, as it was in Israel, where every time we compromise our position away from God's, not suggestions, but his desires and commandments to us. When we give up our authority, we're giving it to someone else. It is not black and gray and white. It is black and white. We either give it up or we don't give it up. Either we act or we don't act on the authority we have. Or we're going to act because someone else has the authority to tell us what to do. In Israel, as they gave up that authority, they ended up with three gods who were overseeing them during this period that you mentioned with Solomon. You have Baal, which represented success, Molech, which said, I will give you, if you only will give me the innocent, if you will only give me your firstborn, if you will always give me a child, I will make certain that your crops come in and you don't have to be dealing with all these other things with God. I am your God. Just come to me and I will make certain that you have everything you desire. And finally, with Ashtar, who is an androgynous goddess, who is neither male nor female, and promoting those values, and the entire interior of Israel just gutted itself out by giving away its authority to act. Not to act with the wishes that Moses is here. The one thing I like to remind everybody, Moses is running out of time. He's been told by God at the end of so many days, some think it's 36. Here we are going already to the 11th chapter. You are going to be getting a birthday present. Your birthday present is going to be to come home. At 120 years of age, you're coming home. And the thing that really that we overlook is that Moses is being driven with, if you read through the text as we read through it, I don't want to forget anything. Here's this, and here's this, and here's this, and here's another precept, here's another precept, here's another precept. And then he says to them, you're not there yet. You still are difficult people. But I'm telling you, the formula of success is to listen to your uncle, as it were. Listen to me. And you will be able to go into the land of milk and honey and get everything that was promised to your forefathers, to Abraham and his children. But when you give up the authority as the children of God to another, you will find you're going to find calamity. It's going to be horrifying for you. I lay before you life and death. I lay before you blessing and a curse. Now think about it. There's people in this world who are living under a curse. Were they born in that curse? Yes. Did they have anything to say about it? Did they have an authoritarian government? No. The government decides if they're cursed or not, and whatever blessing it wants to provide. So they're not free. You cannot choose between one thing or another because you've never had it. However, Israel found out what it was to come out of slavery and how to be free. And then they had difficulty for 40 years in trying to learn that one lesson. You're a free man. You're an autonomous person that can make decisions. You must choose. And in this case, today, Moses is saying, you have a choice. Do you want to curse? And the way to do that is to give away your authority. Give it away. Give it to somebody else. Someone else is going to give you empty promises. I'm going to take care of you. Don't worry about it. Just worship me. Put your values in my values. Put your values on me. And to have my values. And the other is, Moses is saying, listen to your Creator who loves you, who cares for you, who went after you. And then as a nation, he married you. And he said in his ketubah, which is the Torah, his commandments, these are my promises to you, and I will take care of you. Later on in the Haftorah, we could read that portion in which God is literally saying, I love you, I care for you, I want you back. This is hundreds and hundreds of years into the future from this context. But nonetheless, God's saying, you have made poor choices in the past. That's in the Haftorah. But right now he is saying, don't make those poor choices now, because you're going to get a huge blessing if you just listen. All the promises that I gave you are going to come to pass. So this is his formula for success. And for those that are not familiar with the Hebrew Bible, it is not passé. It is as accurate and as relevant as your own heartbeat right now. And he is saying, listen to me. Listen to me, follow my ways, and you will live.
Yeah, well said. I actually brought up the Haftarah. Just so people know, Haftarah is the Sephardic pronunciation. Haftorah is the Ashkenazi pronunciation. So since I lived in Israel, I'm going with the Haftarah, which is the Sephardic pronunciation. Just so you guys understand the difference there. So this is the Haftarah. This is Isaiah 54. Who is he talking to? He's talking to the nation of Israel, to the northern kingdom of Israel, to be specific, who has been afflicted and tossed about, and he's bringing her back. He says, "O you afflicted one, tossed with tempest and not comforted, behold, I will lay your stones with colorful gems and lay your foundations with sapphires. I will make your pinnacles of rubies, your gates of crystal, and all your walls of precious stones." If this sounds like the New Jerusalem, it should, because it's the same description. God is describing that. And that's one of the beautiful things about the descriptions of the New Jerusalem, is that it really is talking about, it's both a city and it's a wife. It's kind of this weird thing, like, well, which is it? Both, okay? Because who lives there? God's people. All right, that's the beautiful thing. And so he goes on, he says, all your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. In righteousness you shall be established, you shall be far from oppression. For you shall not fear, and from terror it shall not come near you. Indeed, they shall surely assemble, but not because of me. Whoever assembles against you shall fall for your sake. Behold, I have created the blacksmith who blows the coals in the fire, who brings forth an instrument and for his work, and I have created the spoiler to destroy. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me. So, Moses is telling them, guys, stick with God and it will go well for you. I got before you life and death, blessing and curse. What are you going to do? Well, we know that they chose badly, unfortunately. But as Bob just pointed out, they're really, Moses was trying to instill this urgency, this sense of stay the course. Don't go after all of that shiny, glittery stuff, because it only leads to death. It looks exciting, it looks real, but it's not. It's just a facade. And you will hate the day that you choose that path. So follow the Lord, stay in his path. And there's a couple things I wanted to bring out in in the text in here in Deuteronomy. So he's talking about, hey, Bob, can you mute yourself?
Sure.
Thank you. He's talking about how, you need to stay with the Lord because he is going to bless you and you're going to be amazed at what he does. In fact, look at this here. You may slaughter and eat meat within all your gates, whatever your heart desires. He's saying, look, you guys can enjoy it. God is going to provide it. And you can go for it as much as your heart desires, whatever your heart desires, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he's given you, the unclean and the clean. Now, let me just make a little word here, because some people might think, oh, wait, does this mean you can eat unclean things? No. He's saying that clean people and unclean people, maybe a woman has had a flow of blood. Maybe a man had a nocturnal emission. Maybe somebody is leprous, okay? Or whatever it may be, for whatever reason that they are unclean, they can eat of this. So it's not saying only the clean people can eat of this, but this is everybody. But then he really brings this home. You shall not eat the blood. You shall pour it out like on the earth like water. All right. So this whole idea of not eating the blood, sadly, is one of those things where we the church have gotten off big time, because I remember I was having a conversation with some pastors years ago. We got on the topic of Acts 15, and I'm like, yeah, I can't believe that some people have blood pudding, and it's not only nasty, but we're not supposed to do that. And he looked at me, he just got in my face. He's like, we Christians are allowed to do anything because we have freedom in Christ. And I was like, whoa, what happened? I'm like, yeah, but the text is for the church. Nope. That was a transitional period, and we have freedom in Christ. Well, unfortunately, for his interpretation is quite wrong. But I guess fortunately that God hasn't changed. That's the good news. And God is still against eating blood. It's just not good for you. Whole different story about that. But God's word doesn't change, which is, I get quite excited about that. And so if people would not eat the blood, then there would be blessings. Now, we know that in various cultures, sometimes people would eat the blood because they think they're somehow ingesting the essence, the power of the animal. And sometimes they're enemies as well. And it's just not true. I guess there's no nice way to say that. You're not ingesting the essence of that. God's saying, get rid of it. And there's even a spiritual aspect to not eating the blood, because the life is in the blood, right? And it's the blood that will make atonement, will make a covering for your souls. Now, it's interesting that the forces of darkness want the blood. My theory, which I talk about in Corrupting Image Volume 2, my theory is that the blood is what they need to find nourishment. We humans can eat from the Adamah, because we are Adam. We're from the Adamah. We're from the dirt, and we can eat things from the dirt, right? Lettuce comes up from the dirt. Spinach comes up from the dirt. Even the animals, in a sense, come up from the dirt. And so we're eating things that are from the earth. But what can Satan eat? Because he also was cut off from the source of life. And so he needs some kind of sustenance. And I would argue that that sustenance is blood, because it's of not only a physical nature, but also of a spiritual nature. And I think that is one of the overriding reasons why in the occult, demonology, Satanism, they're very much into blood, but for a very different purpose. God's purpose is not to eat the blood. He's not like, that looks delicious. I'm hungry. You got any blood for me? Not at all. He's like, look, this is for you. It's not for me. This is for you, to make a covering for you so we can hang out together. But Satan's purpose is that it's for him. He's deriving energy from that. And so God says, just pour it out. You have nothing to do with that. You don't want to go there. So yeah, we have that. And then, well, you know, a lot of good stuff. But I would argue maybe we should go to the next chapter, Bob, unless there was something else that you wanted to make mention of on this chapter. You're muted again.
There we go.
Okay.
I wanted to make a point on, in terms of some life lesson for us today. And what are those things that are in verse 31? Emphatically in verse 28, 12-28. Observe and hear all the words which I command you. And then as you go down to 31, you shall not do as the Lord your God, for every abomination to the Lord. And he tells us what those abominations are. Now, what I wanted to touch on was how this goes into the Brit Hadashah in chapter 5 of 1 Corinthians, where Paul is speaking to the Corinthian body, and he is listing the things that are abominations to the Lord. And he lists out those elements which was actually being practiced inside the church. And there was no accountability. And in our society, we have this notion that's run rampant, and that is, we are not to judge. We don't judge anybody. So you can do whatever you want. That's where you got what the other brother, who was even a pastor, who said, no, we're free to do whatever we feel like doing under Christ's liberty. Really? Take a look at what Corinthians has to say. And he is talking about a man who is actually living with his father's wife. He said, oh, well, the church is kind of tolerating. No. In the Roman Empire during this same period, you could be slaughtered. You could be killed for doing exactly this horrible thing. And now this person is inside the congregation, and the people are looking the other way. They have no interest in pursuing anything. In fact, we even find in verse 9 in that letter that we never got in history, where it says, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Which letter? The letter that was actually 1 Corinthians. This 1 Corinthians is actually the second letter. So why the Holy Spirit withheld that first letter was specifically aimed at this congregation. But we get a follow-up on what he had said. Apparently, he had spoken to the wall. No one did anything. But he begins to elucidate all those elements that are part and parcel of their society inside the body, inside the synagogue, inside the ecclesia, inside the administrative arm of the kingdom of God on earth. He said these things should not happen. What I wanted to touch on was we are to judge. We are to judge the behaviors against what God has told us specifically is an abomination to him. And because we practice these elements, whether it's in real or virtual or in our minds, the fact is that it's an abomination to God. And what accountability is there within the body? The scriptures are full of to take inventory and ask God to help us and to forgive us. I know of one particular minister who is very well known, who says, I operate in a constant state of repentance because I'm constantly screwing up. I'm always catching myself on things, and I'm asking God, please help me, because I know I can come right back to you and have you help me. But that sensitivity, some would say, oh, a person's being oversensitive. He was loud in his conversation. He would whatever. He was his mind life was a little bit went off for a split second. No. This is asking God to really permeate my life and give him permission our authority over to him and asking him to hold us accountable so that we will not offend our Father. It isn't just the offense of God in creating treason against the throne. It is against a loving Father who loves us, who cares for us as his children. And we offend our Father. And if you ever had a loving Father who really cared for you, that would be the last thing you'd ever want to do, is to turn around and walk in to his house and say, well, I'm going to stay with my girlfriend and I for college. I've already changed my mind about a lot of things, and I'm just going to come into your house, and I want my old bedroom, and I want to do whatever I want with my girlfriend, to put it in a very terse way. The offense, and we watch the Father's eyes tear up and say, I'm so sorry that you made these decisions, but you can't stay in my house with that activity. You cannot be here. And here Paul is telling the body, hold yourselves accountable one to another in love and affection so that you don't hurt God. The Holy Spirit is in you. He's a personality. You can offend him. You can grieve him. You can hurt him. Operate in joy and in goodness and in purity, and your entire life will change. But I wanted to touch on these things, just highlight some of them as we tie into the new covenant, because we talk about abomination. Oh, that sounds like, it's some old hat stuff. No. We're worshiping the same God in this society as that of Solomon's period with those three same gods. They still operate. We have chosen as a people of this nation to support that God. We turn around and tell God through abortion, you can't expect this woman to go through all of this. She's in her second or third year of college. Her entire life is going to be ruined because of her quote unquote mistake. And therefore, it makes sense for her to kill her innocent child. Well, that's worshiping the god of Moloch. Period. It's as simple as that. Or to turn around and we see the different gods. What kind of gods? Who are the gods? Gods are things that we deal with and put higher value than the elements and the commandments of God. Every time we compromise, we remit authority to the one that actually wants to destroy us because he hates us. And we give authority for the enemy to come in and bring in disease into our families, disease into our thinking, and we could become corrupted after the Lord has brought us a new life.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Muriel has a question. She says, what's the meaning of 11:29? You shall set the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. So, Muriel, when they come into the land, they're actually going to go to these two mountains that are near Shechem, and they're facing each other. Okay, so it's kind of like a little amphitheater. All right, so you've got the curses on one side, you've got the blessings on the other side, and the people are going to go through this. We see this in Deuteronomy 28. All right, and they go, or maybe it's 29, but they go through there, and they list all the different curses, and they say, okay, you shall not do this, so be it, right? And they go through the whole list of the do's and the don'ts. And so it's a very much interactive, participatory service that they're having, if you will. And that's what Moses is talking about here.
And there's tens of thousands of people. It's huge between these two peaks.
Yep. Yeah. So we're coming to Deuteronomy 13, which is talking about false prophets. And I wanted to actually start with 1 John chapter 4, which talks about that same thing, just so you get a sense of, the New Testament is talking exactly about the same stuff that we see in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, right? So I think, we should always keep that in mind, that these are perfectly integrated. It's not that there was a big wall down the middle and all that stuff is done away with, and now we're New Testament Christians. I've heard that from people. It gets to me. We're Bible people, okay? Because the entire Bible is God's word, and that's why we study the whole thing. So 1 John 4, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and now already is in the world. You are of God, little children. You've not overcome, and you have overcome them, because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are of the world, therefore they speak as of the world, and the world hears them. We are of God. He who knows God hears us. He who is not of God does not hear us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. All right. That is powerful stuff. All right. Moving on to Deuteronomy 13. He says, if there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder comes to pass of which he spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods, which you have not known, and let us serve them. You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. You shall walk after the Lord your God and fear him and keep his commandments and obey his voice. You shall serve him and hold fast to him. But that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has spoken in order to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of bondage, to entice you from the way in which the Lord your God commanded you to walk. So you shall put away the evil from your midst. If your brother, the son of your mother, your son or your daughter, the wife of your bosom, or your friend who is as your own soul, secretly entices you, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known, neither you nor your fathers, of the gods of the people which are all around you, near to you and far off from you, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. You shall not consent to him, or listen to him, nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall you spare him or conceal him, but you shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. And you shall stone him with stones until he dies, because he sought to entice you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. So all Israel shall hear and fear, and not again do such wickedness as this among you. If you hear someone in one of your cities, which the Lord your God gives you to dwell in, saying, corrupt men have gone out from among you and enticed the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known. Then you shall inquire, search out, and ask diligently. And if it is indeed true and certain that such an abomination was committed among you, you shall surely strike the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying it, all that is in it, and its livestock with the edge of the sword. And you shall gather all its plunder into the middle of the street and completely burn with fire the city and all its plunder for the Lord your God. It shall be a heap forever. It shall not be built again. So none of the accursed things shall remain in your hand, that the Lord may turn from the fierceness of his anger and show you mercy, have compassion on you, and multiply you, just as he swore to your fathers, because you have listened to the voice of the Lord your God, to keep all his commandments, which I command you today, to do what is right in the eyes of the Lord your God. Wow. It seems like, well, why don't they keep, the gold or that kind of stuff? Well, it's interesting that objects can somehow become charged. They can have a spiritual charge to them. And I know in our day of science, that sounds like hocus pocus, crazy. But there was a girl that I knew back in college, and she supposedly, what she claimed is that she had given up her Satanist ways, and now she became a Christian. That's what she said. Okay. Anyway, she was telling me that she used to have a Ouija board, and she eventually had to burn the Ouija board because there were some spirits that became attached to that particular board. I thought that was really interesting. Now, long story short, she told me, "Oh, I'm now playing with a Ouija board again." I'm like, "What are you doing, Julie? That's crazy. That's stupid. Don't do that." "Oh, no, this one's different. This was made by Parker Brothers. It's really different." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's really a bad idea." Well, she kept doing it, and this spirit named Dale, who was a 4-year-old, air quotes here, 4-year-old who died before his time, was communicating with her. Of course, I didn't believe that. So then a couple weeks later, I get a knock on the door. "You got to come help Julie. She's being choked. Not by Dale, the spirit, but by the friends that he brought along with him." I'm like, this, stupid, right? Well, anyway, we prayed against it, cast out the demons. It was pretty surreal, I have to say, but it was real. Okay, it was real, and Ouija boards are real. The spiritual entities are real, and they can attach themselves to physical objects. So if you have a city in the land of Israel that has gone after these other gods, what they've done is they've given up their authority again. They have invited them in. They've given them a foothold in the land, and then they can become attached to these various objects. This is why God's saying, burn it all, because it's evil, utterly evil. You want nothing to do with that. I also think that, the language here is incredibly harsh, talking about this person who is enticing them to go after these other gods. Your very wife, your best bud, right? Your own children. Just kill them. Like, "Oh, that's the Old Testament. We don't do that stuff anymore." Well, first of all, they were to carefully inquire to see if these things were true. All right, very important. But secondly, if it were discovered to be true, or proven true, the person that is enticing them and saying, "Let's go after other gods," what are they doing? They're being a traitor. This is treason. This is walk the plank kind of stuff. This is absolutely against, God and country in the most literal sense. This is against God and country. This is trying to sink the ship. And you cannot have this kind of person in your midst, because they will continue to fester. And, it's unacceptable, right? If you in your army are marching toward the enemy, and then there's people behind you who are shooting your own people, you're not going to put up with that, right? You're going to get rid of that person immediately, because the person's a traitor. That's what this person is doing. Stabbing people in the back, shooting people in the back. And they have to be dealt with in the strictest of ways.
Well, these prophets, these so-called prophets, are the instigators and the saboteurs within their own community that are saying, overthrow the government of God, the moral government of God that is residing amongst you. Overthrow it for a new morality, for something of freedom. Freedom meaning you could do whatever you want without accountability. That sounds good, but is it true? Yeshua said, "I am the way, I am the Torah, I am the way, the truth." Another way of saying truth is reality. I am reality. What I give you is real. These principles are real. The born-again experience is real. And because of that, you have life. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. But the governance of the enemy comes through his prophetic statements. They may be brothers that we had or have, and they come in and say, but there's many ways to find God, the exactly opposite of what that portion of Scripture says in John. It is saying, but there are many ways to God. But for that, you get virtual reality. You don't get the reality of God. You get a lie. You get something that you could interact with all our virtue, with all our virtue reality games. You could be playing with thousands of people all over the world on these games, but kick off the electricity and you have an empty screen. You have nothing, but you do have death, which means separation. You are separated. And God is saying, I don't want that. I want to be connected with you. I want to give you my life. I want to give you everything I have. It's yours for the taking. Just receive it. Have the confidence in me to open your hand and receive it. It's as simple as that. But do not walk away from me and then instigate others to come and destroy themselves by bringing treason into the camp.
It's such a great way to put it. These people are selling out. They're giving away life for death, and that's what they're trying to bring upon you. They're trying to kill you.
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to kill you and the whole country. I mean, that's like the madman on the airplane that's trying to open the door. If he does that, we all die, right? So this person has to be dealt with. Somebody up in the space shuttle wants to open the door. No, you can't do that. You can't break the windows because then we all die.
So you have to take them out. You got to restrain them. You got to deal with them right now, not tomorrow. Exactly. Right now, there has to be accountability right now. And after you do the investigation, no one says to go out there and just take the guy out. No, let's find out. Do you really mean what you said? Do you how did you get there? I'm still committed to this position, and I don't care what you say, what you do. I don't. Okay, fine. You already told me. Treason.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal, and I don't think we have really the fear of God anymore. To a various extent within our Christian walk. It's unfortunate, but I don't know. It bothers me that so many people have this really negative attitude toward the first 5 books of Moses, to the Torah. And they think all that was done away with. But man, if you take a look at it, it's like God's like, look, life or death, which do you want? Right? So you're like, I'll take life. Okay, you're walking along in this, and some guy comes and says, no, here, take death. it's
take the
ludicrous. Yeah, ludicrous. All right, well, we're in 14. You are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. You shall not eat anything that is detestable. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. And you may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hoof split into 2 parts, and that chews the cud among the animals. Nevertheless, of those that chew the cud or have cloven hooves, you shall not eat, such as these: the camel, the hare, and the rock hyrax. For they chew the cud, but do not have cloven hooves. They are unclean to you. Also the swine is unclean to you, because it has cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud. You shall not eat their flesh, nor touch their dead carcasses. These you may eat. Of all that are in the waters, you may eat all that have fins and scales. And whatever does not have fins and scales, you shall not eat it. It is unclean for you. All clean birds you may eat, but these you shall not eat: the eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the red kite, the falcon, and the kite after their kinds, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after their kinds, the little owl, the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, the carrion vulture, the fisher owl, the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe and the bat. Also every creeping thing that flies is unclean for you. They shall not be eaten. You may eat all clean birds. You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. You shall truly tithe all the increase of your grain in the field, that the field produces year by year. And you shall eat before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to make his name abide. The tithe of your grain and your new wine and your oil, of the firstborn of your herds and your flocks, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. But if the journey is too long for you so that you are not able to carry the tithe, or if the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, when the Lord your God has blessed you, then you shall exchange it for money. Take the money in your hand and go to the place which the Lord your God chooses. And you shall spend that money for whatever your heart desires, for oxen or sheep or wine or similar drink. For whatever your heart desires, you shall eat there before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. You shall not forsake the Levite who is within your gates, for he has no part nor inheritance with you. At the end of every third year, you shall bring out the tithe of your produce of that year and store it up within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no portion nor inheritance with you, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates, may come and eat and be satisfied, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hand which you do. Well, this, of course, brings us up to the food laws, right? And, you know, the food laws are one of those things that people certainly divide over. Now, there may be people watching right now that say, oh, I'm really happy to eat pork and shrimp and shellfish. Look, if that's your position, okay, that's your position. I'll share with you my position. And my position is what we just read. Now, let me say this. I used to think differently. I was raised differently. I was raised to eat pork and shellfish, and I didn't think anything of it because I didn't even know I was supposed to think anything of it. It's just what we did. You know, we had ham sandwiches, we had bacon, pork chops, we had pigs even. We raised pigs, we slaughtered them, and we ate them. That was just what we did. And it took me many years to finally understand that those are not for us. Even though I'm a Christian and I'm not Jewish, it took me a long time to really get to the point where, like, oh, and it was a friend that helped me understand that what it says in the New Testament about things that we may eat. It was actually 1 Timothy chapter 4, where it says in the latter days there'll be doctrines of demons who were forbidding people to marry and to eat food that God created to be received with thanksgiving. And I was like, well, what's the problem, right? I mean, if we say thanks for it, I thank you, Lord, for this ham sandwich, then I'm good, right? And he pointed out a little word that made a big difference, and it was the word food. And he said, look, God has already defined for us what food is. And it was one of those moments in my life where I was dumbfounded. And I was like, oh, gee, I don't have a comeback for that. I don't have a retort, to say, yeah, but what about? I had nothing to say, and I studied it, and I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I studied it, and I was like, yeah, that is what it says. And it wasn't easy because I knew that I would be judged within the affiliation that I was with. They would be thinking that I'm becoming all legalistic and all this different stuff. But you know what? I mean, it took a few weeks to kind of get over it, but then I was over it. And I haven't looked back. In fact, now when I look at ham or anything made of pig, I'm just like, ugh, like I'm just kind of grossed out. To me, it's the same thing as looking at rat. If you put rat before me and I knew that it was rat, I'd be like, oh, that's disgusting. I'm not going to eat that. Or if you put a dog in front of me, I'm like, I can't eat that thing. That's nasty because it's not food. And once I understood that God said, look, these animals are not food. Just because you stuff something in your mouth doesn't make it food. Underneath my kitchen sink, there are all kinds of cleaning detergents. I could put those in my mouth. Little kids can put those in their mouth and swallow, but it doesn't make it food. It just makes it something you can ingest. You can swallow it, but it doesn't make it food. So God has given us a list of what he considers to be food and what he considers not to be food. So things that are considered food, we eat. Things that are not considered to be food, we don't eat. Simple, very simple. You don't have to get all snazzy, on this thing. You just do what the text says.
In the hierarchy of the animals of all sorts, whether in the air or the sea or on the earth, what he is telling us is that these are the bottom eaters. These are the garbage collectors of societies, of the elements of the earth. These have to be taken care of. The earth has to be taken care of. Pig is such a huge, it is such a huge value in American society, as well as China and a variety of other countries, or even Europe. But it's interesting to have another view to look at who these and what these animals are. They're there to take up all the whatever's left over. It's the trash can and disposal store that God has for the ecosystem of the earth. It's interesting, some of the insights of the sages. They tell us about this pig. He's a deceiver. He looks like he has a split hoof, doesn't chew the cud, but that's something that you don't know unless you opened up the animal and saw that he didn't have the same equipment as a cud-eating animal. So he's a deceiver. The one thing about this particular animal that is interesting, the male will not fight for the female. If another male wants that female, he just walks away. There's no commitment. So many of the sages look at this as that is not an example of goodness. That is not an example. He will not defend his piglets. He will not defend his own prodigy. He just wants whatever he wants, and then he walks away. And it's kind of a lesson to us all in terms of the kind of moral character that we have versus what these animals have. It's just some interesting information. The other is that when you mentioned about the rat, well, what is the rat related to? Oh, rabbits, other animals like the same animal. Why doesn't God want? Because that's what he wants us to stay away from. That's all. It's like telling your father, well, I know better. I went to college. Oh, really? I made the universe. Make me a universe and tell me and come back to me. Let's talk about that. He did it, and he set a set of order for us to follow so that we can live long lives that are meaningful, that have reason, that have fulfillment. And God's not trying to be a meanie. He is trying to give us the very best that he has for us if we only listen to what he has to say and not get into arguments with him. Why is I see things better, not from a different viewpoint, but I see it better than you do.
Yeah, that's telling God how he should really have done things. Yeah. Well, hey, let's go to chapter 15, and I think that'll give us some great stuff. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts. And this is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not require it of his neighbor or his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Of a foreigner you may require it, but you shall give up your claim to what is owed by your brother, except when there may be no poor among you. No poor among you, he says. Sorry, lost my spot there. For the Lord will greatly bless you in the land in which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance. Only if you carefully obey the voice of the Lord your God to observe with care all these commandments which I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you, just as he promised you. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you. If there is among you a poor man of your brethren within any of your gates, in the land in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother, but you shall open your hand wide to him and willingly lend him sufficient for his need, whatever he needs. Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin among you. You shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put your hand. For the poor will never cease from the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor and your needy in your land. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you send him away free from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. You shall supply him liberally from your flock, from your threshing floor, and from your winepress, from what the Lord has blessed you with. You shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I command you this thing today. And if it happens that he says to you, I will not go away from you, because he loves you in your house, since he prospers with you, then you shall take an awl and thrust it through his ear to the door, and he shall be your servant forever. Also to your female servant you shall do likewise. It shall not seem hard to you when you send him away free from you, for he has been worth a double hired servant in serving you 6 years. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. All the firstborn males that come from your herd and your flock you shall sanctify to the Lord your God. You shall do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You and your household shall eat it before the Lord your God year by year in the place which the Lord chooses. But if there is a defect in it, if it is lame or blind or has any serious defect, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You may eat it within your gates. The unclean and clean person alike may eat it, as if it were gazelle or deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. A lot to think about in that passage. There's just some obviously great stuff as always, but the whole thing about the releasing of debts, I'm convinced that if we were to get on this schedule of doing our debts and releasing people from debts, I'm convinced we would not have the boom and bust cycles that we have today. We have these, the bull market goes up, then it seems to crash, and then it goes up and it crashes. And for example, right now we are doing a crazy amount of inflationary type tactics. We're kicking the can down the road and we're hoping for the best. That's pretty much what we're doing. Is it going to work out? Well, it might in the short term, but I doubt it's going to work out in the long term. Now, I can't predict the future, but I can look at the trends and I can look at what God said to do. You should release debts. So I think we would save ourselves a lot of trouble if we just did what God said to do. The other thing here is to be generous. Be generous. I'll tell you, in fact, Jesus even talks about having the evil eye, right? The evil eye. He says, if your eye is evil, your whole body is evil. What is he talking about? Evil eye is a phrase that means to be greedy. Your eye, and you're looking at that thing and you're saying, I want that. I've got to have that, or I have it and I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to share. That's the evil eye. It's the little kid in the playroom and they want the truck and nobody else can have the truck and they're not going to share. It's mine. It's Gollum from Lord of the Rings, Smeagol, right? He wanted his ring, the precious ring, right? That's the evil eye. That's obviously to an extreme. We all like to hide the evil eye. I don't have the evil eye. Well, we probably all do on different days. But we want to get rid of that so that we are not living that way. We need to be generous. And the whole point is here is God saying, look, I gave you all this stuff, right? In fact, it was in chapter 10. don't forget that it's the Lord who gives you the ability to gain wealth. God lets us become wealthy. He's the one who lets us acquire wealth. So we don't want to be evil, have the evil eye. Greed. Boy, it can be so subtle, so insidious. We can justify why we don't do different things. As even as I'm talking, I'm like, I probably should give more, right? Because, I don't know, there's just that weird tendency to hold on to things. But God says, no, give away. And when we practice giving away, he says, I've got more for you. I'll give you more. But when we start holding on and it's mine, then all the other, the streams of blessing that were coming our way begin to dry up. And then we find ourselves with only what's in our hands. And then even that disappears. So when we're generous and we give away, we find that God provides even more. Oh boy, so many good things in here. It looks like we lost Bob. Maybe he's having some computer issues. But then lastly here, the man or the woman that serves you for 6 years, bless them when they go out. Don't just say, okay, hey, thanks for serving me for 6 years. It's been nice seeing you. See you later. No, give them generously of what you have, because God gave you this incredible increase while they were working for you. So make sure to give them something. This is really kind of, human resources 101. All right. This is probably something that every employer should study. Be generous. Give to those who work for you. Okay. It doesn't have to be, a crazy wage, but it should be a good wage, because the good, and certainly for the good employees that work hard, they're going to bring you more increase. And so it's really a great, just a great principle. So, well, we are out of time for today, guys. Thank you for joining us. Get the app. If I didn't mention that already, I think I did, but get the app. You can go here again. You can take your phone and you can just do that, or you can just go to the website, thewaycongregation.com, and you can look at that, or you can just go to Apple Store or Google Play Store and put in The Way Congregation. Look for the menorah there, The Way Congregation, and you can get the app. Download that. Hope you'll use it. We have resources on there for you. We have a Bible reading program on there. We're working on getting a Bible that's going to read for you, which will be really cool. So we're working on that. Give us a little bit of time to finish that project. We've got other resources, just a lot of my books and videos that you can avail yourself of right there on the app, all for free. So go ahead and check that out. If you want to donate, if you want to give to the ministry of the Way Congregation, you can do that through the app. Tell somebody about it. Share it. I think it's going to be great. And I'm really hoping that you guys will use it to pray for one another. I think that is so powerful. In fact, when I learned about these various tools, I thought, being able to pray for one another is great, because there's incredible power in prayer. And we need to all pray for one another. Not only me praying for you, I'm happy to do it, but you guys are qualified to pray as well. And let's all be praying. Let's pray big, because God is going to do amazing things. So make sure to get that. Tomorrow night, I will be doing Prophecy Roundtable with Scott and John. We're going to be looking at Psalm 83. So I hope you can join us for that. And then, of course, on Shabbat, we have our Shabbat service. So if you're in the Denver area, please come join us. We're in Lakewood. You can get the address on the website. If you can't make it in person, then join us virtually. And we'll see you then. Till next time, God bless you guys. Take care.